Hi, I'm Scott Bowden, Tasmanian cyclist, currently living in France, 2016 Rio Olympian, and you're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to episode 289 of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by Polar's world-leading heart rate monitors and GPS watches, and the Physical Performance Show's very own Learnings membership, where you can support the production of the show from just $5 per month and in return receive free access to all upcoming and back-catalogued live stream events. I'm Brad Beer, sports physiotherapist and exercise scientist by trade and training, and founder of Pogo Physio. Each week we'll bring you the latest and greatest information and inspiration designed to help you perform at your physical best. And of course, we do this across a range of our different episodes: expert editions, interest editions, coaches' corners, catch-up episodes, and of course, featured performers. And hot off the back of last week's very popular Coach's Corner episode featuring head coach of the Fast 8 Track Club and coach of Australia's Olympic sensation Peter Bol, fourth in the 800 metres in Tokyo, you'll enjoy a featured performer episode today featuring Australian road and mountain bike cycling Olympian Scott Bowden. Now, Scott shares around his career's highs, lows, and learnings. And last week, you may recall Justin Rinaldi sharing his philosophy as a coach that his athletes must go all in order to discover their potential. Justin shared that there should be no plan B, and that those that hedge their bets 50-50, trying to do two things really well at once, often do not succeed at the levels of those who go all in. And you'll hear Scott Bowden on this week's Featured Performer episode share around the lengths that he is going to ensure that his athletic potential is realised on the bike, alongside the many highs, lows, and the learnings that he's taken thus far. By way of bio, Scott Bowden is an Australian mountain biking and road cyclist who currently rides for French team Bourg-en-Bresse. As mentioned, Scott rode in the road race at the 2016 Rio Olympic Summer Games and also in the mountain bike cross-country event as well. More recently, in 2021, Scott fought his way back from illness, injury, and being dropped from his long-term team to secure a podium finish in the elite men's national road race in one of Australian cycling's greatest national title shootouts to date. So get set for some great highs, lows, and learnings with this week's featured performer, Scott Bowden. Welcome to the Physical Performance Show.
Thanks for having me on, Brad. It's a pleasure. Long-time listener.
You mentioned that, so you've been tuning in from afar. You're over in Europe at the moment. As we speak, you're just 2 days out from a 5-day tour. Where are you sitting at the moment, Scott?
I'm in Bourg-en-Bresse, which is in the Ain department of France, 70 kilometres northeast of Lyon. The sun's shining, which is a treat because I don't think I've ever been anywhere that rains quite as much as here.
And you're having a cup of coffee. This is how you start your day.
This is not the life I've been living the last couple of months. I'm well aware is not the reality of a real normal life. Like, wake up at like generally around 8 a.m., which is pretty cruisy, have a coffee, breakfast, maybe tune into a bit of ABC News Live on YouTube if I am not too bored of keeping up to date with COVID, because that seems to be the only news that's reported on in Australia at the moment.
So you watch ABC Australia News, yeah?
Yeah, that or a little bit of, there's also a live news channel. I think it's called French 24 News, but it's in English. So if I feel like touching base with what's happening, otherwise it's really easy to just be in this bubble away from yeah, real life. It's particularly at the moment. I've been trying to come back from pretty nasty bout of illness, so it's sort of been, really focused period, I guess, on training and racing and everything that comes with that. That it can be quite easy to become detached from the real world a little bit.
And I mean, you mentioned illness there, injury. We'll touch on this as part of your bio, if you like, but you've certainly typified this show, which is the highs, lows, and learnings of an early, professional cycling career there, Scott. I think you first sprung to my knowledge and prominence at the last iteration of the Australian Road Cycling Championships, with all the years blurring together. It was 2021, and you picked up the bronze medal in what, in my mind, was one of the most eventful, exciting national road races, if not road races, I've ever watched. I think I watched the last hour and a half. I was gripped. There was people getting dropped, coming back. It was a real war of attrition. Can you just talk us through what that meant to you to be on the podium at the national championships for Australia?
Yeah. There's a fair bit, I guess, for me to talk about there, because that's a race that I've always paid so much attention to before I really got into racing. It was one of the few races that SBS would live stream, of races that aren't in Europe that you can watch in the same time zone. So, yeah, I would watch that of a weekend afternoon. It used to be sort of around Australia Day. Yeah, you'd always see some really phenomenal performances, and it was always great. I loved seeing guys like a close mate of mine finished fourth there, Campbell Flakemore, and then even guys that were on like the continental teams, when they would get on the podium against the big world tour guys, that was always super inspiring. And in 2019, I finished sixth, but I never quite got to the front of the race because there was a couple of guys up the road. So, but I guess that gave me the confidence and sort of planted the seed that, I really want to go to this race one day and race for the win, I guess. 2020, I had glandular fever, so I sat out the race. I could barely even stay awake to watch it on TV. I had to go and have naps in between. And then 2021, I wasn't planning to do it. I'd had a knee injury. Around October or November, I'd had a bit of a break from like an off season, and then started doing a bit of mountain biking in my first couple of weeks back, and flared up my knee and doing that, and then had actually quite a bit of time off, maybe probably 6 weeks where I wasn't able to train properly. So but I went to the gym every day, 5 days a week for a month, swam, I think my biggest week was nearly 40K in the pool. And then my first proper week of, I guess you'd say, decent training load on the bike was the week of Christmas, and I still didn't have nationals in my mind. I was just lucky that it got delayed. Did a lot of training in January, and then watched the Santos Summer of Cycling, or basically what was the Tour Down Under, but in just a domestic format with no international teams. And that sort of, I had massive FOMO and thought, I'll at least go along to nationals, and made the last minute decision to book flights and went over. And I guess I was quietly confident because I knew I was going okay, but I hadn't done a proper race like that for so long. And then to be there, in the final laps, I was just, I guess each lap as there were less and less riders, I got more confident, and then just backed myself for the sprint. And it was close, but not quite close enough. But in the end, I was still pretty happy to get on the podium. Yeah. With
Cam Meyer and having a blank on the other podium place getter.
Kel O'Brien.
Yeah, of course. And we'll tag that finish up in the show notes because it really is a finish for the ages. And I read that you knew you were going into the 2021 Australian Road National Title championship race there, because you'd been training with Richie Port back home in Tasmania. So there's some serious talent that comes out of that little island, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is. And I think, I guess I didn't have a training program as well for, I think I'd started having a break in September or October. And then when I came back from it, I hurt my knee. And then I hadn't done any structured training in the lead up. I'd just been, my training pretty much, I live in Hobart and Richie's based in Launceston, which is about 230k, like a two plus hour drive apart. But I have family in Launceston, so I'd go up there and stay with them, do a few days solid training with him, and then go back home. And then I sort of got, as the summer went on and I started getting a bit fitter, I got a bit sick of driving up and down the Midlands Highway. So, yeah, one day I finished maybe a 3 or 4 day sort of riding with him in Launceston, had to rush home for a mate's wedding, got home late from that on the Saturday night and then slept in Sunday and then rode back up to Launceston via the Highlands, knocked out another 2 days where it was just Richie and I, and they just happened to be probably the two hardest ones we've done training days so far. Sort of 4.5 hours, just us two, pretty much chopping off the whole way, then rode back home again after that. So, yeah, like it's probably not the most conventional. I don't think a coach would probably prescribe in maybe the training I was doing, but for me, it was just like it was really easy on the head. In my mind, I wasn't even training. Like I was just riding my bike, enjoying it. Yes, I was working super hard. I was just like, I know I'm going to Europe. I just want to get in a good base, and I don't feel I'll be more structured once I get over there.
And Scott, I mean, your early days, your roots were in mountain biking. You're an Australian Olympian, Rio for the mountain bike race and the road race as well in Rio.
To clear that up, I was selected for the mountain bike race, and then for cycling as a whole sport, they can only take a certain amount of riders, and they took an extra rider for the track teams pursuit because they fancied their chances, I guess, being more of a controlled environment, taking home a medal. So they put an extra rider in for the team's pursuit, which meant one less spot they had for the road race. And then, so I was asked to then step in as a support role in the road race, to try and help support Richie.
And that must have been a fantastic experience, your debut games.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like, and being teammates with Rowan, Dennis and Simon Clark as well, some really, really experienced guys. And then obviously, like, of course, Richie. And that was a phenomenal experience for sure.
And unfortunately, the day didn't end well for Richie there in the road race, not far from the finish.
He had it stacked against him pretty much from the get-go. Like the first circuit we did, I think 3 laps of, and the first 2 laps he dropped his chain on because there were some really rough cobbles that hit at about 60k an hour. And it was just chaos. Like it wasn't anything to do with him. It happened to a lot of guys. Some guys were crashing and breaking bikes. Yeah, he was having to then, I would have to stop. I would stop with him. And like Rowan also would help get him back to the peloton. And then, I mean, that didn't change the outcome of his race. It was then on the descent on the final finishing circuit where obviously he had a nasty crash. And yeah, it was just super, super bad luck and really, not great to see.
Yeah, you would have to have picked him for the podium that day, right?
I mean, it would have been really cool to have seen what he could have done because 2016, he was in super, super shape.
Yeah, gosh. One of those stories from road cycling that are just so commonplace. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast. But your early roots, what got you onto a bike in the first place? I mean, a young Tasmanian fella, what's he doing getting onto a mountain bike? What was it? Was there any other sports that were, grabbing your interest at that point?
Yeah, well, first, I guess early on I did quite a lot of sports. First, I was like mad into soccer and played sort of like for school soccer team, then a regional soccer team. The BMX nationals were near my house. I can't remember. I must have been like maybe 6 or 7, and I could hear the commentary and wondered what it was, and went for a drive with Mum, saw all these cars, and I didn't even know there was a BMX track only a couple of K away. So watched that, and then the next week I think went down just with the bike I had and started racing. And then got super into that. That was sort of my first taste of like really taking sport super serious. And yeah, went to a couple of national championships, and they used to have this 2-week block across Victoria of racing where you'd sort of race day on, day off. It was called Track Attack, and I'd go over there with a group of Tassies. I think when I was about 9 and 10, I think I went. And yeah, at that stage, Mum was still packing my suitcase with Ziploc bags with all the different clothes in them, writing on what they were. But I think, yeah, that was experiences like that. I think I took a lot from going forwards. But yeah, so it was BMX, and then yeah, that sort of took a back seat when I started getting more into athletics, like little athletics first, then yeah, just your standard track and field, and then but I was always gravitated more towards cross country in the winter. And I guess as well that was another sport where I started rubbing shoulders with some really high end athletes. Like actually, I think the first state cross country champs I did, I think I was 4th, and maybe Jake Birtwistle was 5th.
That's a good scalp.
Yeah, it is actually. And then I think when I was 11, I'm pretty sure Jake won. I don't know exactly where I finished, but I'm pretty sure Stewie McSwain was 1 spot behind. So it's incredible because there's no way, like obviously seeing what he does now, just to think that it was possible to beat someone in a foot race that is now one of, I guess, the quickest guys in the world. I guess that's a good story, because when he was first starting, he wasn't the best. And then
look at where he is. But it also gives a bit of an insight in the fact that you had, a modicum plus of endurance talent. Scott, you obviously have developed the ambition and career post, but there was some raw ingredients to work with.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, because then after running, it went to sort of triathlon, because I felt like I'd always, struggled with niggling injuries running. But to be honest, looking back, like I found some of my old training diaries, and I'm not surprised with like what I would do. Like, to be honest, I probably needed a bit more of a running mentor to say, just chill out and don't try and run. Like for me, I couldn't comprehend going for any sort of run and doing more than 4-minute Ks, which just, when you're like so young and I hadn't grown, it was just stupid. Yeah, I think it was just the enthusiasm. I just always loved doing stuff, whatever it was. And then it was when I got to high school, I found the mountain bike, and also the school found out I had a road bike, which I'd bought for triathlon, and then they got me into some road racing, and then they had a 7-kilometre mountain bike course on campus in the bush, and that's how I got into mountain biking. So that was really lucky.
Wow. And at that point, as an enthusiastic mountain biker, Bourg-en-Bresse mountain biker, did you see road as part of your future at that point, or was it all about the mountain bike?
I always liked riding on the road. Like, I always really enjoyed it, and did a lot of training on the road. But then I still didn't have a proper coach for cycling until I was 17 or 18. But a lot of like fond memories were actually around that time were on the road bike, going out with mates, usually that were older than me, and just riding like as long as we could, going and riding places we'd never been, coming home like super hunger flat because would have had no idea about correct fueling or anything, just eating maybe like one muesli bar every like hour or two or something, riding far beyond what was sort of probably our endurance capabilities. But I guess that's things like the adventure side of it is what made me probably fall in love with it initially, yeah.
Yeah, gosh. And all the way through to, I mean, what was the first moment in your early career where you realised you had significant talent? Was there a breakthrough win or result, or was there someone that came alongside you? You said you got your coach at 17 to 18 years. We recently caught up with Simon Garen, who happened to have Phil Anderson as his next-door neighbour, all-time Australian cycling great, which is incredible serendipity. But and I asked Simon the same question. Was there a moment in time where you started to really believe you had something, or where someone actually said, hey, you should take this more seriously? Or was it a slow burn? Simon said it was a slow burn for him.
I'd say the same, because like when I was at school, I guess I progressively got a bit more serious in mountain biking from sort of 16, 17 to 18. When I was 18, I went to Europe for the first time to do some mountain bike junior world cups. And then I made the team for the junior worlds in South Africa later in the year, but I decided not to go because it was around the same time of my year 12 exams, which to that point I'd always sort of prioritised school. I didn't really make many compromises on, because I just wanted to finish that and do it well and then worry about sort of what came next. I changed my mind about what I wanted to do, went to 2 days of the orientation week of uni, decided, no, this is not what I want to do, had a gap year and pretty much just worked 20 to 40 hours a week in a bike shop to pay to go to Europe twice that year to race. Then if there was one breakthrough performance, it was sort of at that stage I was first year under 23 and I think finished maybe 6th or 7th at the national championship. So nothing like super. But then at the end of that season, at the first national round in maybe November, Dan McConnell and I rode away from the field, in the elite field, and he dropped me with like half a lap to go and I finished second. And I thought, this was at the end of 2014. And I thought, wow, like maybe it's actually realistic to have the Olympics as a goal. And I think that's sort of what really sparked it. And then the next few years after that, I think I thought of it every day.
To then end up at the Olympics in 2016, Rio.
Yeah.
And then your professional career, your Bourg-en-Bresse professional career on the road, Scott, what's that genesis been like? How does a young rider from Australia, obviously you've got the Olympic Games representation on the mountain bike there as part of your resume, but how do you make an impression? What are your steps and how far along with that process are you? Because it must be hard.
Wow.
We see Tadej Pogacar and some youth now winning the Tour de France at 2021. It's such a phenomena. Is it hard to be patient and not want it all at once?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess for one, I've sort of stopped. I wouldn't say I compare myself to other people. So seeing younger people do things like that, it doesn't really bother me. I guess what potentially does is when you see some people that have never beaten you in a bike race before and you've got maybe more to offer, that they're getting contracts and you're not. But also that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I think the moment you start worrying about that kind of thing, it's like the beginning of the end. Mm. And at the end, all I've come to realise now is that, to be honest, now I probably enjoy riding my bike more than ever. I enjoy the process more and I enjoy racing more. So it's, at the end of the day, I'm probably more driven than ever. I work harder than ever, but I also enjoy it more. Maybe that's because of having a lot of setbacks, I guess, since I went to the road in 2017. I started well at the national championships and finished, sort of just off the podium, and then did the Cadell Evans road race with the national team and then crashed the day before Herald Sun Tour. I got a glass stuck in my front tyre going around a corner, punctured, crashed, got some swelling in the knee, didn't realise, and then started Herald Sun Tour and had to pull out a few stages in because of that. And then that just started a domino effect of injuries that plagued that year. If I went back now, there's certainly things that I could have done to have prevented it from being such an ongoing thing. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I could break the last few years down into so many little pieces, but and say how I could have done things differently. But I don't know. Like, I wouldn't say I'm definitely not content with where I am now, and I certainly want to progress. And my overarching goal is to get a proper professional contract on the road over here in Europe. But I think, to be honest, the bigger driving, what motivates me to do everything right and get out the door and train and race hard is actually just to see how good I can get and get the better. Just do the performances, put forward the performances that I know I'm capable of.
Simon Garen started his pro career at 25. By his words, he was not an early starter. And look at his one of the greatest successful cyclists of Australian history. And as you say, comparison is such a thief when we compare whatever it is in whatever walk of life. But what are the practical steps, Scott, in getting that, securing a pro contract? What do you need to try and do next?
Well, like coming into this year, once I realised I was coming to Europe, the main goal was Tour de Savoie Mont Blanc, which starts in a couple of days. So it was just nail a good result there. And also having been on the podium at the national champs at the start of the year was like a good, that's got to help. There are a number of races that I wanted to hit the ground running with as well, particularly at the end of May when I came to Europe. And I knew that if I could perform there and do what I was capable of, I was pretty confident. But then I had a break before I came to Europe because I didn't want to get sick. I wanted to be fresh when I got over here. And that, immune system just firing on all cylinders before doing the big travel. And then a couple of days after getting to France, I got sick. And then basically I was steamrolled for the best part of 3 months. So I missed a heap of racing. I was struggling to do 1 hour training rides. So like I for so many times I've always had in my head a clear pathway, a clear plan. I've had all I needed to do what I need to do to get to where I want to go. There's just been some other little hurdles that have popped up along the way.
The highs and lows, right? And the learnings that come with those.
Absolutely.
What would be, Scott, some key ingredients in a typical training cycle for you? We've asked former road cyclists this, Adam Hansen, Simon Garen's, what are some of the key constituents that you like to have in your block of training?
I think something I started in 2015 was strength training, like going to the gym. And I think there's it's hard to quantify exactly what and how much that benefits you, but I think it's also the holistic benefits of things like injury prevention, also just being a bit more robust as an athlete, being more efficient on the bike, particularly because cycling isn't always all about peak numbers. It's about fatigue resistance. And I feel like the more efficient you can be throughout like however long a tour is or even a 5-6 hour stage, that by being strong from head to toe, it just allows you to do a higher percentage of your best at the end. And also, perhaps for me, I feel like my sprints developed a bit in the last maybe 12 to 18 months. And I'm not sure, but maybe that's because last year with COVID and no racing, a lot of time spent at home. I spent, a lot of time doing a really focused block in the gym. Aside from that, I actually really like doing long endurance rides. Like, it's not something you do, maybe year round, every week. But like, I do think something that I really do find beneficial is doing like the odd 6-7 hour ride, or if you feel like it, maybe even more. I don't know. Like, I just feel like it sort of brings you up, but it's not something you're going to do all the time. There's definitely a time and place for it. But other than that, it's just consistency. And also, recovery, everyone talks about it. But once you get fitter, you're able to handle more load, and it's easier to do your easier days even harder and for longer, just because you feel good, just because you can. And if you're someone that enjoys riding like I do, it's quite easy to turn a recovery day into a 3-hour ride. And if you do that both days of the week on your potentially two recovery days, for 1 week it's all right, 2 might be all right, and you can kind of keep doing it. But there sort of comes a point where it's like, maybe just hold back and actually just recover on those days a bit more.
You're listening to Scott Bowden, Australian road racing and mountain bike cycling Olympian, on this featured performer episode. Support for today's show comes from Polar. And as you know, the Physical Performance Show is here to help you inspire your physical best performance. And we couldn't be more excited to have partnered with Polar. Polar are a sports technology company who build world-class GPS watches and heart rate monitors for people who take their health, fitness, and sports performance seriously. Polar have an incredible heritage. Headquartered in Finland, they've been the global driving force behind scientific wearables for over 4 decades. They are the pioneers in and the world leaders in heart rate measurement technology. If you are going the distance, Polar's products provide you with the best 24/7 monitoring so you can create a fueling plan that is optimized for you alone. In the heat of the battle, you get all the reminders you need so you don't blow up when you should have fueled up. Now, as a starting bonus, the team at Polar are offering up to 15% off. So if it's time for you to nail your fuel plan once and for all, check out how a Polar watch can do this all from your wrist. Head across to polar.com and use the code TPPS on selected products to receive up to 15% off. Polar's GPS sports watches and monitors enable you to get the precision view on how many calories you burn and the different fuel sources your body is using across the day, and for every single training session or race. In seconds, you can add their FuelWise feature to any activity, which automatically calculates the amount of carbs you'll need and gives hydration and carb reminders throughout the session. This allows you to focus on the task at hand with the confidence that your fueling plan is taken care of. Worn by many of the best athletes on the planet, you too can know your numbers and get the most out of your performance. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio's online telehealth consultations. If you are an endurance athlete, cyclist, triathlete, or distance runner, then Pogo Physio's online telehealth consultations can help get you back to your physical best following bone stress injuries, tendon-related injuries, or joint-related concerns. You can schedule your 45-minute online telehealth consultation with myself or any of the Pogo Physio team over at pogophysio.com.au/telehealth. And lastly, as always, support for today's show comes from our Patreon membership, which we call our Learnings membership. Now, this is simple. If you'd like to support the production of the show from just $5 per month, you can do so over at Patreon. Just search The Physical Performance Show, and there you can pledge your support from just $5 per month. And in return, we'll grant you complimentary access to our back catalogue of live stream events, including Dr. Stephen Seiler on all things polarized training and Dr. Shona Halson on all things optimizing recovery. And looking ahead, in October 2021, we're excited to be bringing our next live stream event featuring UK-based author and sports dietitian Rinny McGregor, Fueling the Endurance Athlete. Tickets are $49 per person, but once again, complimentary for our Patreon supporters. So if you'd like to support the show and get access to these live stream events, once again, jump over to patreon.com. For now, let's jump back with this week's featured performer, Australian mountain bike and road racing Olympic cyclist, Scott Bowden. Scott, what tips would you share around fueling for the endurance rider or endurance athlete?
Yeah, it's almost something that you don't want to share, because I feel like, I mean, people are definitely getting better at fueling now, but I think that in cycling, particularly a sport that traditionally and historically has been so weight focused in terms of power to weight and being able to climb well, that so many people make the mistake of underfueling, and not just in racing but in training. And I think the more you practice that fueling correctly in training, one, it allows you to absorb the training load better. Two, you're able to actually complete the training to a much higher standard. And then three, you getting more, like if you only ever fuel properly during a race, you're not really training your body to be efficient at actually absorbing what you're putting in. I'm not a sports scientist by any means, but to me it does make sense that when you're exercising, the heart preferentially pumps blood to the working muscles to provide oxygen. And then when you rest, it's probably pumping a higher percentage of blood to the stomach for digestion. But if you're trying to smash in a heap of fuel during a race and you've not trained your body to redirect the blood and absorb what you're actually putting into your stomach to your muscles, then I guess as well, that's where you get gastrointestinal issues as well if you haven't trained it. So I think also practicing in racing, in training, the same fueling strategy you'd use in racing is a big thing.
You could have saved me a lot of pain in my first Ironman, Scott, if I had have spoken to you first. It's one thing to know, but it's the second thing to do. But some very smart, insightful comments you just made there, particularly about adapting, I think, to the training by being appropriately fueled. Anytime we are dealing with leanness sports, cycling, triathlon, running, gymnastics, where weight does have a bearing on performance, there is always going to be grey zones for fueling, right? There's going to unfortunately be athletes who are underfueled. And as you mentioned, it affects performance, but it can certainly affect health as well. It must be, and everyone's got to figure it out for themselves, but you must still see some quite shocking shocking's maybe not the right word, but some concerning examples of that in amongst the neo-pro peloton.
Yeah, I don't think even the riders at the highest level are exempt from it. I think there's still guys that haven't figured out quite what the correct way is for them to do it sustainably and in the healthiest manner possible. Of course, there's times where you're going to be stressing your body and pushing the limits more than others. That's just the nature of the beast with elite endurance sport. But I feel like for me, nailing nutrition, I like eating healthy. That's no problem. But what requires the discipline and focus and I guess effort is actually just doing it properly. Like for someone to go and just, really restrict and underfuel, that's almost the easy option. Yes, you feel hungry, but you can lose weight a lot quicker. But at the end, that ticks that box, but it doesn't tick the performance box of turning up to the race and actually still putting out your best numbers. So it kind of takes a bit more, I guess, discipline and effort to nail it over a longer period of time with smaller deficits and still maintain that performance and hopefully overall health, because you sort of still, it's not much good turning up to a race if you're already on your hands and knees because or you're sick even. So
yeah, it's making sure there's enough to get you to the start line and absorb the training you've done and perform on the day. You just mentioned numbers, Scott. What numbers are you, I should say, guided by in your training? Are you looking at a lot of data or just a few key metrics, power, heart rate?
I'd say I have awareness of a lot of, I never used to look at heart rate whatsoever. Now I look at it a little bit more just as to touch base with like how I'm feeling. And even resting heart rate is probably more actually something I would monitor a little bit, and HRV, although I feel like I take that all with a grain of salt. But I do think like off the back of being sick for quite a long period of time, I do find it a bit valuable, I guess, having a bit of touching base with what my resting heart rate is and how my body is just generally. Out on the bike, again, maybe the heart rate just for a bit of tracking of like fatigue. If you're really tired, your heart rate's going to be sort of lower. But then, power, I definitely do look at, but like I'll do I also ride quite a lot on feel. So like I might have efforts that are subscribe power, but I won't be fixated for a lot of the time on hitting the highest numbers possible. But then on other days I might go above. Like it really just depends on what the goal of the session is, where I'm at that particular time, how I feel. Be guided a lot by, I guess, just feel. For the cyclists listening, like to be honest, I don't really pay much attention to chronic training load, CTL, or any of those things. I guess coming back from like sickness where I had a lot of fatigue, I have just touch base with like the fatigue levels, the number you get, just to make sure I'm not completely going into the red. Although, I think all the numbers now that there are, I think they're great because you can be much more informed as an athlete, but it's not something that I ever worry too much about. To be honest, the numbers I probably worry about that I pay the closest attention to is like getting enough protein in the day during a race, eating enough carbs, not having too big a calorie deficits, and like matching as best I can during these focus periods where I'm trying to get back to my best, matching what I eat to what I burn in training.
Gosh, Scott, that's they're excellent insights there. And just explore these a little bit more before we launch into a performance round. You mentioned getting enough protein in and then eating enough carbs. I know we shared earlier, David Bailey, performance manager for Bahrain Victorious, they've introduced a points system for their riders for ingesting and being fueled enough for carbohydrates during the race. So they created a competition, who can get the most points in essence. They've found that highly successful versus counting the number of grams, say, of carbohydrate. How are you practically ensuring you get enough carbohydrate in and enough protein in?
Actually, that point system sounds quite good because you don't have to crunch the numbers by yourself so much. But and to be honest, I think that's the biggest difference between the level of World Tour and all the other levels below it in cycling is they have people telling them how much to fuel, and that's why one reason, and even why cycling in general, why the level has just gone through the roof, is because people are now fueling correctly. And I'd say in the races I'm doing now, you can feel in the race. Like I get through the first couple of hours, and any bike race is hard, whether it's your local crit, whatever. But I like it once you get through those first few hours, because then there's just such a drop off in performance, because I would say largely, maybe it's to do with training and everything as well, but I'd say for a lot of guys, they're just not fueling correctly, like as in they're not eating enough in the race. Yeah, I'd say for protein, I would just aim between at least 2 grams per kilo of body weight of protein a day. And so like breakfast, 40 grams of protein, which generally I'd say breakfast is the hardest one to hit. You have to try, I guess. And then lunch, again, maybe you need to try a little bit. Dinner, I'd say if you're eating healthy, you're probably doing at least that anyway. I feel like hitting that, you don't have to calculate things too much. But for the races, I generally take all my own food, because what the team provides is they don't have a sponsor, but they do provide fuel gels and that sort of thing for the races. But I take my own SIS or Morton products, so I can ensure I get enough. And it's crazy the amount of comments I've had in the peloton, like guys asking to buy the SIS gels off me, whether they're joking or not, I don't know. Or like guys saying, "Oh, you eat so much, huh? Like you're doing an 8-hour race today." And I'm like, okay, I actually don't even say anything. I'm like, yeah, like you just wait and see. Because I want to be as good in the first hour as I am in the last hour, and this is how I'm going to do it. And like, I don't really care what you think.
The results take care of themselves, and you may not wish to share, but for example, Road Nationals 2021, we picked up the podium finish, a real war of attrition with stochastic efforts everywhere, people going off the front, and it was just an incredible race. What were you sort of trying to hit there per hour in carbohydrate ingestion?
There's no secrets here. I mean, it's so easily available now, and that's the thing. Like, I think the level of cycling or endurance sports only going to keep getting higher, because it's so much easier to just find this access to information of what's ideal. And that's certainly changed in only the last few years. But I can't remember exactly, but I'd certainly would have been aiming for at least 100 grams of carbs an hour. But maybe over the course of the race, I would say it would have been between 80 to 120 grams an hour, but probably more in the range of 100 to 120.
Simon Garen shared that he'll try and eat solids initially and then maybe taper down to something that's not as solid as the race in duration goes on. I think it must be a personal preference. Some people swear by solids, some people can't tolerate them. I think it is a real trial and error process, yeah?
That's interesting, actually, and I'm not surprised to hear that at all, because that's probably been the more common and favourable approach. And certainly if you're someone like Garen that's done, I hate to think how many race days in his career, certainly eating solid food is also far more enjoyable than putting in a liquid gel. But for a one-day race like Road Nationals, I just stuck to gels the whole race. And I mean, on a circuit like that, and this year it was the fastest time on that course. So like the demands of the race were super high, a lot more than in 2019 when I finished sixth. So which also is interesting for the people that say, oh, but there was a lot of pros stuck in Europe that weren't there. It's like, yeah, maybe, but it didn't make the race any easier. If it actually made the race was actually faster. For that race, I just had all gels and then obviously carbohydrate electrolyte mix in the bottles. But perhaps for a stage race, it also depends on the race, because if the race could start with a 5-kilometre climb in the first 5 kilometres, you're probably just going to be taking on gels from the beginning. Maybe and then the break goes, maybe you've got a long flat stretch road, you get some solids in then. But I think a race like Nationals, it starts at the bottom of a climb and then you just climb every lap. And this year the pace was pretty unrelenting, I guess. So it was also just easy to just put gels in.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Look, thanks for sharing so openly there, Scott, on that. It's a big topic. You're listening to episode 289 of the Physical Performance Show, featuring Scott Bowden, Australian 2016 road cycling and mountain biking Olympian, sharing on his career highs, lows and learn-ins. Now, if you missed last week's episode, it was a Coach's Corner episode featuring Justin Rinaldi of the Fast 8 Track Club. It's been very popular. Justin shared many great takeaways and many people have been commenting on the learnings thus far. Now, here's a little snippet of Justin Rinaldi on last week's episode.
It's kind of tricky, and that's what I find the most stressful part of not being a full-time coach and having a job, because I'm not there at the major championships. I'm not there watching the athletes and making sure they're not pushing it too hard. I remember in 2014, Alex Rowe was in amazing shape. He equaled the national record around 1:44.40. I sent him a session to do, but in the back of his head, he wanted to show the coaches there that he was really fast and could make that 4x4 team. And so instead of hitting the times that I prescribed for the session, he went a little bit quicker. Actually went a lot quicker and tore his hamstring and didn't run, didn't even get on the start line of the Commonwealth Games. And I believed he could have won a medal, definitely won a medal there.
To enjoy the full episode, if you missed episode 288, be sure to jump over to wherever it is that you enjoy the Physical Performance Show from. You'll find us now also on YouTube and, of course, across any of the podcast players. Whilst there, check out the archives dating all the way back to episode 1, featuring surf lifesaving Ironman champion Ali Day. For now, let's jump back with this week's featured performer, Scott Bowden, Australian road and mountain bike Olympic cyclist. Are you ready for a performance round?
Yeah, sure.
Training session most disliked?
Gee, I quite enjoy like a really long ride. I quite enjoy intervals and I quite like doing a recovery ride. Stretching's not really a training session, and I don't even dislike that much, but I don't do it super often. So we'll go with that.
Let's go with that, Scott. Training session most loved?
Oh, yeah, probably like like 5-6 hours with efforts, with intervals.
Ooh, solid day. Favorite
only when you're fit though.
Yeah. Favorite pre-race meal, and those intervals I imagine are vary in duration, short, long, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What's the shortest? What's the longest you might include?
Shortest, could just be a 10 or 20 second sprint, and then longest could be an hour.
Wow. Favorite pre-race meal, Scott?
Boring, just like rice and chicken or something. Super simple.
Keep it simple. Who's the athlete Scott Bowden most admires and why?
Wow, I feel like there's a lot of people that I admire for different reasons and from different sports. Generally, I guess, this is probably, for anyone that knows me, it's probably quite typical. They'd probably guess that I would say Richie Port but maybe they don't know why, and I guess it's because he came from Launceston working at the pool. He actually had the same English teacher that I had at school, and that English teacher told me that Richie said, "Oh, when I'm older, I'm going to be." He's like, "What do you want to do?" And he's like, "I'm going to be a professional cyclist in Europe." And the teacher just kind of like laughed at him and said, "Oh yeah, okay, cool. Like, keep dreaming, champ." But then like you only have to look what he's gone on and done. But he didn't go through like the AIS or any program like that. And he came to it a bit later after triathlon. And I think it's what inspires me is that he stuck at it after doing 2 hard years in the Italian amateurs, turned professional, I think, when he was 25. And then also, like, he's continued his progression. Like, I think a lot of people underestimate quite the level that he's reached in terms of he's probably actually the best one-week racer in the world. It's just that in a country like Australia, where there is gaining interest in cycling, but it's still all largely focused on the Tour de France, which is why it was so good to see him get on the podium there, because I think it gains a bit more recognition for how good he actually is.
Yeah, totally. But even so, I mean, Richie finishes 3rd on the podium and 3rd in the Tour de France, and there was not the same media attention you'd expect in Australia. It was all about the football, and I found that a little bit underwhelming given the magnitude of that achievement.
Yeah, maybe it also, I'm not sure, but maybe it had something to do with COVID as well, like, because perhaps I don't know, but maybe he could have come home for a block, after the Tour, and there might have been, like when Cadell won the Tour, there was he came back to Australia, I think, and in Melbourne they had like a big ceremony and that sort of thing. They did in Launceston, they gave him the keys to the city over the, I think December. So at least that was, from like for a Tasmanian perspective, it was nice that it was cool that they did still show some recognition for the achievement.
Yeah, I think you're right. The COVID had a lot to play with that. Toughest competitor ever raced against. Who's that and why, Scott?
Oh, wow. I feel like I've probably had a lot of battles over the years. Myself.
Wow. Good answer. Good answer.
Like trying to get the most out of myself. That's the battle. Yeah.
Yeah. Mantras. Is there a mantra that you use regularly, Scott, on a tough day, racing or?
No. I do have this quote. I don't know where I picked it up from, but it's stuck in my head of like what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. And I'm sure maybe there's a couple of others, but like, actually get knocked down 99 times, get up 100. Maybe that too, but yeah.
Very, very fitting for a bike rider.
Yeah.
Scott, nearly out of the performance round, one word to describe your racing style.
Persistent.
Oof, powerful.
Just hanging in there, yeah.
Hanging in there. How would you describe, Scott, being in the zone?
Well, I guess like tunnel vision. Or like you'd say, you just for cycling, you'd say you just had a chainless day. Like you couldn't feel your chain. Like your legs just felt great. Like, yeah, you've got the confidence that no one can ride away from you. No matter if someone attacks, you know that they can't drop you. Maybe they can, but your confidence is that they can't. Yeah, and I guess you're just super alert and attentive to everything.
Yeah, powerful. Chainless day, I like that. And finally here, Scott, what's the hardest training session you can ever recall? We know that epic sessions don't make champions, but it's still a fun question.
Yeah, I'd say the one training session I did leading up to Nationals was, and I've done similar to this before, I think everyone does. They find a local climb that's similar to the Mount Buninyong one in terms of length and gradient, and they go and do repetitions of it. And I did one ride. It was, 16 laps of this circuit. But to be honest, it didn't really that closely resemble Mount Buninyong because it was far harder. I did, I think, maybe 5.5 hours, but like just shy of 5,000 metres climbing. And like every lap I would do, like an effort for part of the climb. That was the length of Mount Buninyong. Then I'd ride still solid to the top, pedal hard on the descent, and did that 16 times, all within about probably a 10K radius from where I live.
Gosh, it's a good lockdown training session for people that are listening in Queensland at the moment. 10K radius.
I actually coach one fella from the sunny coast who's from Tassie, and I said to him, he said that they were going into the snap 4-down lockdown. And I was like, if that was me and I was back home in Tassie, I'd be sweet because I just cut laps of Collinsvale, which is this particular client.
There you go. Scott, well done. You're out of the performance round. Every guest of the show gets asked 2 set questions, and one is, if you could boil everything you've learnt from your evolving career to date into one piece of advice to help listeners of the show perform at their best, what would that be?
I feel like there's a couple things. First, I want to say be patient, because everyone's progression is different. Everyone has different set of circumstances and hurdles along the way. So, but then also that flows into being persistent. Actually, this was written to me on a singlet at the Geelong Cross Country Nationals in 2000, and I don't know what. I was probably 13 or 14. And I can't even remember the guy's name, which is really bad, but he was from New South Wales, and he gave me his singlet and wrote on it patience, persistence and passion. And I'd say, the third one, passion, is like, if you love what you're doing, then, that's the overriding thing that'll sort of help guide everything else.
Wow. Scott Bowden's 3 Ps, patience, persistence and passion. And we could credit the guy at the Geelong Cross Country. We just can't remember his name.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And Scott, every guest of the show issues listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So what is Scott Bowden's physical challenge going to be?
Ride twice the distance of what you've currently ever done.
In 1 week or in one ride?
No, in one ride, yeah. So for some people, I feel like there won't be too many listeners that have ridden 400K or 300, but that would really suck for them, because maybe they'll have to do it in 2 days. Yeah, because that ties in the adventure side of it. It's like, I think during these times where there's so much uncertainty and competitions getting cancelled, it's a good time to. For me, it was like I got into cycling, or first found the love of it through riding a lot with mates. So I guess it's not necessarily going to make you faster. Hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully you can do it with some mates and make it more of an experience than just training, because at the end of the day, I think you have to find something a little bit more in sport than just fully performance 100% of the time.
Powerful words there, Scott. I don't think anyone can argue with that. Brilliant stuff. Scott, for the listeners that want to follow on your journey, you're on social. Where can we find you? Where can we track along?
Just at Scott Bowden on, I'd say probably Instagram is where I post most. I do use Strava and generally upload training onto Strava. I think that's just Scott Bowden.
So we'll tag all that up in the show notes, and just look for the bow next to your name there on Instagram, Scott Bowden. And you're 2 days away from the 5-day stage race, or 5-stage race, I should say, Scott. Can you just give a quick little insight into what that looks like? Starts with a prologue time trial.
Yeah, it starts with a short prologue, which is, I'm looking forward to it. It's quite technical. It's got a lot of corners by the looks. I'll check it out tomorrow. It's got a steep little climb in it, and then a descent as well. So that'll be good to just blow out. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it starts Wednesday. It'll be good to blow out the cobwebs, get a bit of nerves out of the way. And then basically it's just 4 days after that of savage mountain days, like what you would see in the sort of the 4 hardest days in the Tour de France, all back to back in the French Alps, in the Savoie region. So, yeah, looking forward to that.
Well, Scott, we certainly wish you all the best, and thank you for your contribution to the show. And we all look forwards to seeing Scott Bowden lining up in one of the Grand Tours in the coming seasons, without doubt.
I hope so. Thanks a lot for that, Brad. It's been a pleasure.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show, and I trust and I know you enjoyed an insight into one of Australia's rising endurance/cycling stars, Scott Bowden. Now do reach out and let Scott know what it was that you've taken from his highs, lows and learnings. You'll find Scott on Instagram at Scott Bowden, simply Scott, Bowden. Whilst there, be sure to drop a podsy, that's a screenshot of the episode that you're enjoying, and tag it in the show at Physical Performance Show over on Instagram, and we will reshare all of those. Do consider, please, leaving a rating and review over on iTunes if you've been enjoying the show. We'd love to hear from you. Please let us know what it is that you enjoy about the show. We read all of the reviews. And conversely, if you have any feedback regarding how the show can be better, I shared an example last week from a listener around improving the intros, then please feel free to reach out. You can do that via a review or simply reach me on an email, b.beer@pogophysio.com.au. Once again, another huge thank you to today's show sponsor, Polar. If you are looking for a world-leading heart rate monitor or GPS watch, you cannot look past Polar. And as you heard, Polar are offering up to 15% off selected products by using the code TPPS at checkout, polar.com. And if you're interested in ensuring that your fueling game is strong, then be sure to register for the upcoming October the 23rd live stream event with Rinny McGregor, Fueling the Endurance Athlete. Tickets are just $49 and are available over at pogophysio.com.au/webinar Rinny McGregor. A massive thanks, as always, to the great folk who make this show possible each and every week. Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, and Matthew Olding on all things show graphic design. Now, coming up on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, we will be bringing you that conversation that I had with repeat guest of the show, Andy Blow, co-founder of Precision Hydration, regarding knowing your numbers. How much carbohydrate do you need to take on when you're training and racing is the key theme we explore, and Andy Blow, as per usual, has us covered. Now, off the back of next week's Expert Edition, you can look forwards to catch-up episodes, Alistair Brownlee, and we'll also be catching up with members of the Great British gold medal winning mixed triathlon team relay from the Tokyo Olympic Games, featuring Jess Learmonth, Georgia Taylor-Brown, Johnny Brownlee, and Alex Yee. So plenty coming your way. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.